Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Society of the Eternal Mile podcast for 2018. I'm your host, Noah Sias. On today's episode, we're joined by bassist Chris King from Atlanta, Georgia. You may have known of his work in the band The Funeral Portrait. Follow the show on social media at SOTEM Podcast. Subscribe to the show in your podcast app or YouTube. Feel free to leave a rating if you have a minute. And don't forget about Patreon at patreon.com/SOTEM Podcast. So Happy New Year to all of you. Feels good to have that train wreck of a year behind us. With the new year comes some new formatting in the show. By and large, it's still the same body of work, but there's a few new questions and discussions compared to 2017. Before I get started with this week's episode, I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer on the front of it. Interviews for this show can happen anywhere between a week to a month prior to airing. Sometimes things can happen between the interview and the actual airing of the episode. I interviewed Chris in early December, and a week or so after that, there was a falling out between Chris and The Funeral Portrait over social media. So in the rare chance you're a listener looking for some gossip on that whole situation, sorry, this isn't TMZ. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. My first interaction with Chris was in the summer of 2015 on the, you guessed it, Vertebroken tour with Bermuda, The Funeral Portrait, and The Prestige. As mentioned on the Eric LeBlanc episode, it was just The Funeral Portrait and us for the first week of tour. We started the run in the now-defunct venue, the Goat House, in Odessa, Florida. For those who didn't have a chance to play there, you definitely missed out, but let me paint a picture for you of what that venue was. We had just spent the last 24 hours driving from Michigan down to Florida, and this was my first tour ever. We get to our last turn on the GPS, and we find ourselves pulling into a gas station. Something is definitely not right. We must have put in the wrong address or something. So we all look at our phones for the actual address, and sure enough, we were there. We got out of the van and kind of scoped the area out. Come to find out, there were a couple small shops attached to the gas station, and the Goat House was one of them. The Funeral Portrait got there about an hour after we did, and we did our introductions once they rolled in. Everybody in that band was super down to earth and easy to talk to. For anyone that knows Chris, this will probably get a few laughs. So again, we had introductions, and it was way too hot to just hang out outside, so we all went back into our vans with the AC. We then started having a discussion about Chris's accent. We couldn't tell if he was British or if he had like a really strange Southeast accent. We eventually solved the mystery and found out that he was British. For that first half of the run, we definitely had a lot of fun with The Funeral Portrait, and Chris was always a great time to be around. Did a lot of Walmart laps and random strip mall wandering. Unfortunately, I haven't shared the stage with Chris since, and he parted ways with The Funeral Portrait in the first half of 2017. He was involved in a new project called Never Worn, but that has since ended, so he's currently in between projects. Lots to talk about on this episode, and quite a few funny stories from when we were on the road together. So here's a conversation with Chris King. Chris, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here with you, next to you, looking at you.
When did you first get involved with music?
I first got involved, I must have been about 13 years old when I played my first show, like a school talent show, but in the touring world, it was 2014. I was 19 years old when I did my first, East Coast tour.
Who were some of your early influences?
Oh, man. The entire pop-punk movement of the early 2000s. I think the big ones are Good Charlotte, Sum 41, Simple Plan, and Green Day.
When did you move to the States?
Wow, I actually know it to the date, August 11th of 2009.
Did you find yourself with a greater musical attraction here or back in the UK?
America definitely, being in America definitely helped amplify it. After all, this is the land of opportunity, and I did actually have a great opportunity. I think in England, it wasn't set up right for me to do as much as I've done over here.
Let's talk about some of your early bands.
So, God, it must have been like 2007, 2008. Like the first, it was like me and two other guys, and it was just like a jam band, and I played bass, and it was all just instrumental, and we like played in the music room of my old middle school in England, and I think we tracked something onto like an actual tape. So that was pretty neat. And then me and some other friends did this other project. We covered like Paramore and System of a Down, and we played the school talent show right before I moved. And then from there, I moved to America. I didn't do anything for about a year. Just kind of jammed around with some friends, and then met the people who I'm involved with musically now, AJ and Yergi, and just got to kind of jamming. Yergi was in like this instrumental jam band, and he also had this like progressive death metal side project, and I was like, I want to be in that band. So the way I joined it was I lied to Yergi and AJ because they were looking for a singer for their band. So I lied to them and I said, hey, I can totally sing. You should have me try out for your band. So they did. They tried me out. I didn't sing anything. I was actually way too nervous because I obviously couldn't sing, but it's like trying to see how far I could take it. But it worked out. Here I am like 8 years later, still playing music with them.
So in 2011, Cosmoscope started.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
That kind of branched off from the progressive death metal band we were in. We wanted to do this like indie side project, and Cosmoscope just kind of like came out early phase. We met Steve shortly after, and he at the time played guitar and sang for us, and we just kind of did our own thing. The death metal band ended around this like spring of 2012. And that's when Cosmoscope got its, not like serious, but that's when, it started to gain some traction. We like kind of figured out what we wanted to do. They were like, I'm the youngest in the group. So when they all graduated high school, I was still like a year or two behind. So I, just gracefully bowed out, let them do their thing. Around the same time, the singer Lee joined. And they did their own thing for a year, and it actually gained some traction too. Like it wasn't like a force to be reckoned with in the scene, but like kids who were in the local scene knew who Cosmoscope were, and they knew who Lee Jennings was because Lee was also coming from like another band that he was in that had some traction in the scene. So,
and after a few years, that would transform into the beginning of the Funeral Portrait.
Yes. So I rejoined Cosmoscope toward like the middle of 2013, like right after I graduated high school. And around that time was when we were like, okay, so because Cosmoscope was like a pop band at that point, and we're not really pop musicians, at least not the kind of pop that we were playing. So we were like, okay, we're more of like a heavy, we're like all influenced by this like heavier music. It just would make sense to us to write like a heavier record. And so I think the first song that came about from it, like there's like a couple of demos. The first two were like, I think it was Casanova and All My Circuits, like really, really early on, like All My Circuits. It was like super like synthy. There was like a synth breakdown and a lot of auto-tune. And we just kind of like honed our sound more and more. And like our EP for the Dearly Departed started to be formed, and we were like, okay, we've changed our sound entirely. We might as well just change our name. And I think one night AJ and Steve were just like hanging out, and like AJ and Steve, I think we all are. I think I speak for all of us when I say we're all like pretty into Opeth, and the Funeral Portrait is actually an Opeth song name. So that's where we got our name from, and it's a pretty sick name, and it stuck. It all resonated with us super well. So
you were on two of the band's releases.
Yes.
And as you've mentioned, it was 2014's For the Departed and 2016's A Moment of Silence.
Yes, sir.
There definitely was a different vibe in each release. So it's interesting to hear from like going from Cosmoscope to that first release, and then from the first release to the next one, everything, I guess, without really knowing the original material, it seems like everything was a natural progression forward.
Yeah, I mean, we all have it in our heads to be like, if you're not constantly trying to better yourself in the music that you play, you're kind of doing it wrong. And with For the Dearly Departed, we didn't really know what we wanted to be yet. It was more of a, hey, let's come together and write this like heavy record, and the theatrical aspect of it just kind of came about like almost by coincidence. We didn't set out saying, "Hey, let's write like a post-hardcore theatrical record or EP." It just kind of happened that way. And with A Moment of Silence, we always we knew in our heads that it was a big like departure of our old sound, and it probably wouldn't resonate as well with the fans. But we did it anyway. Like we wrote that record mainly just for ourselves, and that is like a big like mesh of like everything that we're influenced by. It was mainly like Steve wrote the vast majority of that record instrumentally, and Jurgi wrote the vast majority of that record lyrically, and it was like that for the EP too. Yeah, it was mostly Steve's vision, and we liked it, so
A Moment of Silence it's an interesting record, and it's not to say that the first release was like bad or anything. It's not a dig at that, but it's definitely more raw. And like
yes.
Even down to the presentation, because I know when we played with you guys, it was like you guys had a great stage show. Everybody was all like uniform. And then it seemed like once you got onto the second release, it was like, okay, here's something different.
Yeah, we all felt more comfortable when we were in our Moment of Silence phase. For the Dearly Departed, we wanted to like gain as much traction as we could. We did the like that big Alesana tour, the Confessions tour in 2014, and that was our like first big tour. So we wanted to, we didn't like exactly know what we were doing, but we wanted to like kind of give off the sense that like, hey, like we're a band that you should listen to. So they're like the all black and the like the button up shirts and stuff like that all just kind of came about for that EP, but that wasn't us. We weren't all too comfortable with that. You shouldn't really be trying to like portray yourself as something that you're not. Well, when it comes to something like music, because it's an art,
So let's talk a little bit more about A Moment of Silence. What was the inspiration for that release? Aside from trying to like, bring it all together, so to speak.
Two of the biggest inspirations for that record. The first one was My Chemical Romance and their second record, their big one, which name escapes me, but that record is has such a raw sound to it, and that's kind of what we wanted to go for. Like, and you hear it too with like the drums on our record, and just the way things were recorded. Like that record is such a raw record because of that MCR record, and also the Fear Before the March of Flames in that record, the Always Open Mouth. Like a big open drum sound, and there's always something going on. There's never really a moment of silence on that record, because there's always like an ambient thing happening, and that was a big influence too. Like you also hear that in our drum sounds, and like there's parts of songs where like there's just always an ambience going, and it just has a very like underlying sense of existential dread.
Who did you go through for production?
For A Moment of Silence, we went to Glow in the Dark Studios in Atlanta. We went to Matt McClellan. There's like a legendary drum room where like Under Oath and The Chariot has recorded in. And for the EP, we went to Neil Engel. He worked with Christopher Crummett, and we did that in Adelaide Studios in North Carolina, which unfortunately is no more, but we did it through our label, Revival Recordings.
So you guys did a music video, and I swear I remember seeing a casting call for a bunch of dads.
Yes, that was for our song Like Father, Like Son, which in the end, we couldn't get enough dads together. But the original idea was like, get a bunch of dads together, like put them in front of us while we play, like looking kind of like, like they disapprove a little bit. And there's some like cookout or something, but Yeah, we just couldn't get the dads together.
Yeah, I remember seeing the casting call for it, and I was like, if there's any band that could like get away with this, it would be these dudes for sure.
Bring your dads.
So, how was the response to A Moment of Silence?
It was good. You know, as with any sound change, especially in the genre that we were in, it was met with some uncertainty, and that's fine. We all expected the uncertainty. It was nothing that we were like, you know, we weren't going into it blind. We knew exactly what was going to happen, but the reception was, you know, I think that's one of the greatest records that came out that year. So it's just like one of those, like, you know, in my head, it's one of those like cult records that'll like fly so under the radar. Maybe in like 5-10 years, someone will discover it and be like, I wonder what happened to these guys. But, you know, it'll live on in our hearts forever, you know. It's one of those records.
How was Revival Recordings to work with?
They have been some of the nicest people we have ever worked with. Sean and Nick, the label heads, super nice, worked with us every step of the way. Like, don't have a single bad thing to say about them. Sean helped us with pre-production on our EP, really like helped us like shape our sound, and like not even like directly giving us songwriting tips and stuff, but like I know for a fact that I learned so much just from like observing how he worked and like listening to his little inputs and stuff. They, you know, threw us on those Alisana tours, which definitely helped us grow and gave us experience. And yeah, I haven't got a bad word to say about them. Always a good time when they're around.
So, beginning of 2017, you parted ways with the band. Do you have any closing statements for The Funeral Portrait?
There comes a time when you just don't feel the music you're playing anymore. And with The Funeral Portrait, it was just that. Like, we put out the record was awesome, and it just, you know, just kind of fell short for us. And we just kind of fell out of love with it. We're just kind of burnt out. You can't force someone to like do something that they're not in love with anymore. So we were just like, you know, we'd sunk so much time and money into that band. I'd been doing that lifestyle, like constantly touring every other month, like since I was 19 years old. You know, I'd gone through countless jobs and just being broke all the time. And I just needed some kind of like, needed a sense of security in my world.
Moving on, a quick side project formed after the Funeral Portrait lineup change was Neverworn. And I know that was fairly short-lived, but I suppose it's worth a mention. Definitely a different stride than before.
Yes, the like sparkly emo music. Like, I mean, I'm speaking for myself and for Steve. I know Yergi has like a very like eclectic music taste, and AJ too. You know, we all just kind of met in the middle about this, and it wasn't meant to be anything serious at all. It was more just us, like, a way to decompress. Yeah, unfortunately, just we all went down separate paths, and now the band just had to stop.
What's on the docket for you for this year musically?
I've been working on just a little something. I don't want to do heavy music anymore. My goal, my 5-year plan, is to get a song on the mainstream radio. And I feel like I can do that. So this is where I begin, and I want to have something out and like something tangible by about like early summer. I want to say like April or May. I'm just trying to work on that, just better my songwriting abilities and not jump the gun. Because I think a lot of bands jump the gun, and that kills them, like right from the get-go, you know?
So let's change things up a little bit and talk some gear.
Okay.
What's your signal chain looking like these days?
I actually don't. Okay. The only thing I own right now is a tuning pedal. A tuning pedal and Yergi's orange 2x12. We actually traded gear. I was running, in the Funeral Portrait and Neverworn, I was running an Ampeg SVT7 Pro through an Ampeg 8x10, and that was going into a Sansamp power driver, which I use for my DI, and that was going into my tuning pedal and then a Line 6 wireless.
Any items on your wish list?
Oh, yeah. I would love God, I can't even think of it now. So there's this band called The Fall of Troy, and they're I hold that band dear to my heart. And their guitarist is just crazy at effects and stuff. And he has this one pedal. It's a Boss pedal, I'm pretty sure. And he makes these really cool laser gun sounds with it. And I want that pedal, one of those, like, I just want a bunch of delay pedals. I have a whammy pedal, which has been lost to time, so I don't have a whammy pedal, actually. I want a chorus pedal because I love chorus. I like how that's like the big thing now in like the kind of like genre of music that we were in with Neverworn is like everything's just drenched in chorus. I love it. It makes everything like it can make everything like spank so much harder.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not really like big into gear, but I've learned a lot just from like listening to Yergi and AJ talk about it.
All right, so let's have a discussion about the Eternal Mile. When was your first tour and what was the lineup?
So my first tour was September of 2014. Yeah, sorry, yeah. I have my timeline mixed up. It was September of 2014. It was called Chaos is a Ladder, and it was an East Coast run with Alisana as the main headliner, and had Migosh as the support, and then it was us, the Funeral Portrait, and the Things They Carried. And it was a Revival Records tour, like showcasing the bands on that label at the time.
Was that a good, bad, or neutral experience?
Oh, it was an awesome experience. I remember that tour very vividly. Awesome learning experience. Like being able to do what I wanted to do since I was like 10 years old was amazing.
If you had to guess, how many shows have you done?
Easily over 300, and that's just touring. I know when we were a local band, I mean, we always were a local band, but when we were like at like the local level, did like 200 shows in a year. Like we were just constantly grinding. There's been a lot of shows.
Any favorite markets you like to play in?
Anything that isn't a bar show. We have never done well at bars. It's always been an awkward experience. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess the best market to play in is with bands that complement each other and kids that come out and enjoy the music and enjoy every band. Like a big open-minded kind of market, and that doesn't really exist these days, but, you know.
One of the more random, like, markets for us to play in was when we were asked to be direct support to the Browning.
Oh, no shit.
Yep, that was a very interesting tour for us, and thankfully, like with Use Your Burdens, that record, that was the first record I was on with the band, and it was a little bit of a different vibe than the previous stuff, and it was a little more accessible. And so we actually did pretty well on that run, and we were also, it was the Browning, us, and then Fire from the Gods.
Okay.
And it was funny because you'd have like your openers and their openers.
Yeah.
We had Fire from the Gods, and people would be like, all right, yeah, this is cool. Everybody's getting down, but you know, this is the EDM metal crowd, so it's like, I can't wait to dance. I just want to dance. And then we would go on, and it was only a 2-week run, but we had a lot of pride in this. Every single show, that crowd moved for us.
I'm sure.
And it was so funny because it was like, and it was totally push pits. It wasn't hardcore kids, except in Texas. It was serious in Austin because that's where the heat's at.
Oh, for sure.
But it was push pits, and I love push pits because that means everybody's having a good time. You know, where sometimes the hardcore crowds like, yeah, I love it when people are beating the shit out of each other too, but I like people to still have fun and be like, hey, you know, that band was really heavy, but I had a good time.
Yeah, and plus the Browning are pretty heavy too. There's this thing we experienced because we played a lot of hardcore shows, and with us hardcore kids, we never had a mosh pit ever. Even when we did have like a heavy breakdown part, it was something that we called the fuck you horseshoe, where they like stand with their arms folded in a horseshoe around the fucking stage and just stare at you. we get a lot of those.
Oh man, that makes me think of a story here. One of the weirder things, speaking of crowds just being awkward at times, Do you remember when we played Basement Transmissions in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Was that behind in the back of the vape store?
No, that was the day before that show though.
Okay.
That was the one where we met up with the like Moths to Flames tour.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah,
was a weird.
that was a very weird show.
The tour package apparently didn't know that we were playing that, or something weird had happened where the vibe was off.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like, cool, here's this tour package, and here's this tour package, and we're going to merge them together in a sense where it's like, okay, here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And I remember the tour manager for the other package was just like, absolutely not. And it was so awkward because like nobody was welcoming when we went in there.
Oh, hell no, yeah.
And not to toot my own horn here, but like whenever there's a shit situation like that, I always just like thrive. And I remember we played and I slowly started seeing people from the other package start to watch me side stage.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, all right. And we were using the Funeral Portrait backline and everybody was saying like, dude, Bermuda sounds scary in here. And I was like, hell yeah, this is sick. I'm all about it. And of course, nobody wanted to talk to us beforehand. I'm running off stage because we had like 10-minute changeovers.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man, that was such a great set, dude. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why couldn't you just be like civil when we all showed up? You know, I don't get that.
I mean, there's a lot of, not to like bag on anybody or nothing, but there's like a big like ego problem in that scene, like people thinking that they're hot shit, and that's not the way it should, and it's not the way it should be. But unfortunately, it happens. Bands think that like they're too cool for the little guys. So
to finish my thought,
okay,
there's video evidence of this. We're playing our heaviest song of the set. There is like 4 or 5 kids, all like hunched over, got arms over each other, and they're all like bowing together in front of us. And it was one of the strangest things I've ever seen before. And it was great too, because out of nowhere, this kid like straight up Liu Kang, like flying kicks into like the video.
Oh Lord, that's amazing.
I'll have to send it to you.
Please do.
Because it's just like, what the hell? How about favorite venues?
Ooh, easily the Masquerade in Atlanta. So hospitable, even both locations. The new locations, even, I wouldn't say even better, but it's still a good location. Chain Reaction in Anaheim, like, just legendary venue. Like, all my favorite bands growing up have played there. Anywhere that doesn't have like an insane amount of stairs to get to the stage is good in my books, dude.
So Poughkeepsie is out of the question.
Oh, for sure. We played this one venue in Wisconsin, and it was on that Confessions tour, and Alesana's van had actually broken down like the day previous, so they were all riding in our van with their gear and our trailer, and we were like so late to load in, and like we were so late to load in, we got there when we were supposed to play. Luckily, the band after us were playing right there, but like we had to load up our gear and Alesana's gear up like 4 flights of stairs, and we fucking did it. I don't know how we did it, but like we did it, and it was one of the most craziest load-ins we've ever done.
How about favorite city to have a day off in?
Oh, we did a tour with a band called Davey Suicide, and we had a day off between like Texas and Arizona, so we just went to the Grand Canyon, and that was one of the best days ever on tour. Just seeing the Grand Canyon, it doesn't even look real. It's like you see just so far in front of you, it just looks like a giant backdrop. I just can't. Yeah, you just can't describe it in words. Well, we had a show canceled when we went up to Seattle in our tour last December with Famous Last Words, and it wasn't necessarily like a good day off. Like, we were snowed in a Walmart parking lot, but we spent it like drinking boxed wine, and it was awesome.
Nice.
there's this band called CKY, and they have a song called 96 Quite Bitter Beings, and someone had the bright idea of like, let's listen to that song 96 times in a row. And I'll never forget it. That song blaring must have been like 30 minutes at that point, and it's like white outside, you like can't see, snow's coming down super hard. I'm like having a mini panic attack, like, this is how I die.
Yeah, it's literally like the full combination to some weird nightmare.
It really was. I actually think Brian Moore was there with us. He was there with us on that tour. He actually dislocated his shoulder the next day in Portland.
Oh yeah, I remember watching the video of someone like resetting it.
Yep. We were staying with Neil, actually, who did our EP that day, and unfortunately, like, the whole of Portland was like just under thick sheet of ice. So what should have been like a 2-minute walk up to Neil's house turned into like an hour trek. And Brian unfortunately slipped and fell. And yeah, we put his arm back in place. It was great.
What would you consider to be the biggest rookie mistake being out on tour?
Definitely don't fucking focus on anything like scrims or anything like image-wise until you have your sound and your gear together. Like, I cannot tell you how many bands I've seen that have these like giant scrims and their aesthetic is really cool, but their music just sucks. Like, it's majoring in the minor. Like, it looks great and you look like a professional band, but you sound like not a professional band.
Top 3 must-have tour items.
I went on tour like month runs with a backpack. So I had very little with me, but phone charger for fucking sure, dude. Like, I can't tell you how many hours or data I wasted on my phone on tour. Socks. I wore like maybe 2 pairs of socks in my touring career with the Funeral Portrait. Definitely bring more socks because they get crusty. Oh my god. What could be a good third one?
The old tried and true baby wipes.
Baby wipes. Oh, for sure. How could I forget?
We always have this mindset of, okay, if you stink or we just got off stage or whatever, you wipe down before you get back in the van.
I wish we had that. There were some nights, it was like the last night of the Confessions tour again, and like Steve used to sleep in the bunk adjacent to mine, so his feet would be like where my head was, and I shit you not, I almost threw up when I smelled his feet.
Ugh.
The worst, most putrid smelling thing I've ever had to deal with.
Yeah, we would always go through like a ton of baby wipes and like always wipe down your feet. I mean, there's no real like right or wrong way to go about it. There's stupid ways to go about it for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, it's just like, I don't want to smell you.
It just goes without saying.
So Kevin Lyman recently announced that this year is the last Warped Tour.
Rest in peace.
As to why he's ending the tour, the target demographic for Warped Tour of 14 to 17-year-olds has disappeared over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I guess 2017, that run was a great time for performers and vendors, but the box office definitely took a hit. And it's because this demographic that they've been used to is getting older. So, on that note, 2 questions. What are your thoughts on Warped Tour coming to an end? And do you think the aging demographic dilemma is coming for the rest of us?
When he announced that Warped Tour was coming to an end, he announced that like the cross-country Warped Tour, and there were these other festivals like Mayhem and like Ozfest. I don't think he was associated with Ozfest, but there's these other big festivals that have also come to an end. And I think that instead of being a cross-country run, I think that it's going to be like a 2-day festival, like a 2-3 day festival, like how Riot Fest is. And I see it going more of the route of that. But with the aging demographic, all the kids that were once into that music, they're all now like in their early to late 20s. They have lives, they have families, jobs and stuff. And the demographic and the kids coming in now, they're all so used to having like all this information at their fingertips, like they're the ones that like grew up with iPhones and iPads and stuff. Like they've just have this. I feel like they have this like ADD mentality to where if you're not constantly feeding them, they will just forget about you. And I think it is coming for the rest of us. Like bands have to adapt to that and figure out ways to where they can be constantly like giving their fans new material all the time. And if you can't keep up with it, you're unfortunately just gonna lose.
Let's go over some of the less glamorous moments in your career.
I cannot fucking wait for this because there's been a lot.
I have a story for this one, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question first.
Okay.
Any horror stories from the stage?
Oh, yeah. The first one that pops into my mind was the first night of the Debut Suicide Tour. We're playing in Webster Hall. I play a lot on my tiptoes for whatever reason. Like, I walk like that, I stand like that, for whatever reason. And then I remember my left calf seized up, and I couldn't move it, and there was so much pain, and I was, like, in so much pain and agony. And then I tried to shift the balance on my right calf, which then also seized up. So I'm stuck, like, literally frozen in pain, like, cannot move my calves, like, borderline just about to cry. It was awful. But, after a minute, everything was fine. But I have hit Lee and AJ with my bass many, many times. I think Lee actually, like, punched me back once after I hit him in the head with my bass guitar, which was totally deserved. I once spilled a bottle of water on stage on our Islander tour, and it got all over the cables and stuff, and the singer of Islander, like, he didn't call me out per se, but he was like, oh, thanks to the last guy that spilled all this water over the stage. Oh, also from an Islander tour. So, you know how, like, some venues, like, make you wear wristbands?
Yep.
However, this happened, some black magic stuff right here. I come around from doing one of my many bass spins, and the tuning peg, once again, a tuning peg of mine gets caught underneath AJ's wristband, however the fuck. So I'm trying to, like fix this, and then as soon as we break away, I do another bass thing, and my wireless pack goes flying out of my pouch, and then I break a string, all in, like, the span of 2 minutes. I've never been so defeated in my life.
That's so miserable.
It was pretty bad. I don't think I was in a good mood after that night.
I wouldn't be either.
But Pokemon Go was a thing, so I got, like, a Rhyhorn and stuff. That was pretty neat.
Speaking of, like, just really random stuff happening, I've mentioned this on the show before, but one of the more unfortunate things for myself on stage was when I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ooh. And we were out with Archaic, and there was a Inanimate Existence, that's who it was, but they weren't actually with us for that show, I don't think.
Okay.
But it was it was the day after Halloween, and we're on stage, and, we're always just ignorant on stage with our guitars, we're flailing them around, do all that stuff. And they still had Halloween decorations up.
Oh no.
And so I'm doing it. I'm getting it. And I get my guitar way up there because I'm going to play like this. And I'm doing it. And I go to come down, and I can't come down.
Oh no.
And I'm looking. I'm stuck in decorative cobwebs.
Oh no.
So I'm like trying. I finally get it, like, to come off. And I'm literally walking around stage like I'm an Aerosmith with something hanging off the end of my headstock.
That's pretty incredible, though. Like, it's awesome. and I must say, you have one of the meanest, like, faces I've seen. Like, you and, like, Josh Travis, like, top 10 meanest faces I've seen.
Nice. Thanks. They're on the tour we did summer of 2017, when we were in Orlando. This dude down there took a shot of me, and it is just like mean mugging, lumberjack looking, pissed off.
That's how I remember you, man.
Okay, so story time.
Okay.
We are in Sunrise, Florida.
I know where this is going.
At Anonymous Guitars.
Yep, I know where this is going.
That stage sucked. Great.
Yes.
It was a great night, but that stage sucked, and it was very misleading getting off of it.
Yes, it was.
And you said, thank you, good night. And then you walked out the back. And for anybody who hasn't played Anonymous Guitars, it's in this weird, like, warehouse district. And there's like a total, like, loading bay behind the venue. And there's no platform behind the venue. So you literally walk off of stage
Like, into the back.
And
it's like a 4-foot drop too. It's a pretty steep drop.
oh, it was more than 4 foot because we were having to lift stuff over our heads to get stuff onto the stage. You fell off.
Yes,
your bass hit the ground first.
And then my head.
And then your head.
Yep.
And it was just like this huge panic.
By some like miracle, nothing happened to my bass, but I was pretty concussed.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, that was not great.
No, I've hit my head so many times.
So actually, back on your previous discussion about all the times you've snapped tuning pegs, I have a story about JT. So,
oh yeah.
So when I think it was on the same run as me getting stuck in the cobwebs.
Yeah.
Literally, that would have been like 3 days before. We're in Austin at the Dirty Dog.
Oh, hell yeah.
And we're playing. We're doing our thing. And JT goes on. Have you played the Dirty Dog?
Yeah, a couple times.
So you know how like the monitors there, they're not on stage?
They kind of like are off and they kind of wobble if you stand on them.
So now that you've identified the problem, JT decides that he's gonna like do one of those sneak attacks where he walks kind of slow and it's just before like a huge like downbeat.
Yeah.
And he walks and he just goes full tilt, goes to jump on the monitor and it says, "Nah, I'm good." And he rolls his ankle so hard, falls on the stage super hard.
Ow.
Snaps a tuning peg.
Oh.
Now, me on the other side of the stage, I can't really see what's going on because I'm focused. And I was like, this dude's trying to upstage me right now. And, I just see him like on the ground and I figure he's, trying to like really give a weird performance. So I take my guitar off me and start kicking it around the stage.
Nice.
And, I didn't do it for very long, but it was enough where it was like, whoa. And then I find out when we're tuning and he looks like he's miserable that he's hurt. So I was like, man, I wish I wouldn't have did that to my guitar.
Yeah, really? like adding insult to injury, literally.
How about worst promoter or overall show situation you've had to deal with?
There was one situation in Florida, actually, where one of the sound guys thought that Lee was trying to steal his microphone, and total miscommunication. Like, obviously we weren't trying to steal his microphone, but we all got pretty defensive.
How about the most random thing to happen on tour or at a show?
Like we got at one point we got a lot of liquor. And that was pretty random. A lot of liquor, a lot of baked goods too, like cookies and stuff. That was pretty random but awesome.
So here's the story time again.
Okay.
We were in Massachusetts. I forget what the venue was called. Kind of an awkward show.
Okay.
And the local accused you guys of stealing something.
I remember that. Okay, that was also my fault. So I went through a phase where I ate a lot of combos, like the little snacks, and I saw this open pack of like the party-sized bag of combos, and me being me, kind of in a drunken haze, I was like, oh, this must be someone in my bands. So I grabbed this big old fucking handful of combos and eat them, and I see that band, I see them like giving me the stank eye like the whole night, and I'm like, oh shit, I think I fucked up here. Yeah, and then right after they like accused us and started like talking shit about us online because like, oh yeah, like the Funeral Portrait steals things from people, blah blah blah, like a bunch of assholes. I'm like, dude, I took like 6 of your combos. I'm sorry.
And I remember too, you were like, do you want me to go to the store and buy you some more combos?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just trying to be nice about it. Like, I fucked up. I ate your food. I will buy you more. They're fucking combos. Like, come on.
But it took a turn for the worse because I remember after our set, the guitar player of that band had like come up to me and I'm expecting, like, hey man, great set. What are you running? The usual.
Yeah.
And he said, so I hear you're having problems with the Funeral Portrait.
Yeah.
And I said, we are? And he said, oh, well, that's what your tour manager said. And I'm thinking, Brandon's not having a problem with anybody. He's going on and on and on. And then he starts giving me like the spiel, like, yeah, so you should definitely go online and like our band and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
Trying to like really drive it home that I don't want to talk to you, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking shit.
Yeah, about the other band on the tour pack.
Right. You're talking shit about family right now, and that's not gonna work.
For real.
So yeah, that's up there for one of the more random things where it's like it's combos and you're gonna act like they stole your guitars or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember that set too because no one watched us.
Yeah, it was strange. So I'm curious to hear what advice you'd have to a few groups of people. And for starters, let's talk about local bands, and not necessarily local to your scene, but just in general.
In general? Okay. My advice, I mean, going back to the, like, don't major in the minor, just don't major in the minor. Like, make sure your songs are where they need to be, and don't rush anything, Like, you have your whole life to write your first record. You need to figure yourself out first. You will go through countless songs and countless sound changes and stuff. Like, I've been there. You don't need to rush yourself. Just make sure that you, as a person, are where you need to be, and then the music will come, the sound will come, the image will come. Like, everything will come to you when the music comes. Like, don't rush into anything. Make sure you're in a comfortable position to where you can do this. I mean, music is all about taking risks, but you just got to make sure that you have some kind of security,
How about promoters?
Do your best. Like, at the end of the day, the promoter's job is to make sure, like, the show happens and then people are there and that everything goes smoothly. At least, I'm pretty ignorant to what promoters actually do. I'm not going to lie about that, but, flyer for your shows. I know this is the day and age where the internet's king, but people don't read your statuses about your shows. People don't. They could give less of a shit about if you post it on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram. Like, they look at it, go, oh, scroll right over it. Like, you want to get that in as many people's faces as possible. Like, flyer around like the city, like hand out things, because like people will take notice, and those will be people that won't have necessarily seen the post or have read the post,
I think that's the cleaned up version of what our popular answer is.
And what's that?
Do your fucking job.
Yeah, it all boils down to, like, do your fucking job, That's what it all boils down to.
Lastly, how about bands hitting the road for the first time?
Make sure you have enough money. That's a big one. Every single tour I did, I left with not enough money to, like, get myself through. You don't even have to, eat extravagantly. I mean, we were like dollar menu connoisseurs by the end of everything. Like, a big meal for us, like a nice meal, was like going to Denny's. Like, yeah, just make sure you have money for food, strings. If something breaks, or like a daisy chain breaks for your pedal board, or like a tube blows, just make sure you have money to get all that replaced. I think money's the biggest thing. You will have times on tour where you absolutely cannot stand your band members and where you wish they would just fuck off. But that's what touring is, you know? It's not a walk in the park. It's a very, like, unglamorous, stressful environment. You have to be prepared for, like, the worst, because the worst will happen. I mean, I've been in some situations where I wish I was never in, you know, but you just have to be prepared for anything. You know, no amount of, like, mental preparation or talking can ever get you ready for what you could possibly experience.
Before we go, anything you'd like to plug?
Eat your vegetables. Make sure you're not substituting soda for water, because you will get dehydrated and pass out. Nothing really. Oh, first week album sales. Okay, if you like a band a lot, make sure you buy their album in the first week, please. It means a lot to the artist to do that, because that gets them on the shows to where they can play your city. Because I know there's a lot of you out there that are like, oh my god, you're not coming to my city, what the fuck? It's like, buy their fucking album.
And with you having some things in the works that will be coming out later this year, where can people follow you?
I am a Twitter whore. Follow me at _Chris S. King on Twitter. My Instagram is _Space Magic.
Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. Looking forward to what's next for you this year, and hopefully our paths cross again soon.
For sure, dude. It has been my pleasure. It's been great to just see your face again, hear your beautiful voice.
That concludes this episode. I'd like to thank Chris for being on the show. Feel free to check out his work in The Funeral Portrait and Neverworn, and also be sure to follow him on social media for his new project coming later this year. I've been your host, Noah Sias, and as always, thank you for listening.